National Parents Union. I hope that you're all well. I hope that you're all thriving. Hello, America's beautiful children. We love you. We hope that you are safe. And so today, on Fridays, it is Friday, Happy Friday, we have Ask the Counselor Fridays. But before I bring the counselor out, I have my special guest here who has a message that he would like to share. What is your name?
Daniel.
So tell everyone watching your name and who you are.
Hi, my name is Daniel Isaiah Lasser, and my parents are Christina Lasser and Marquise Lasser, and I'm 9 years old.
Amazing. And so can you tell everyone 3 things that help you feel safe?
Not eating too much sugar, and in the seatbelt, and
Your seatbelt?
Yeah, and playing with friends and family.
How about, no, that's amazing. Not eating too much sugar, having on a seatbelt, and playing with his friends and family. And can you tell everyone watching 3 ways you know you're loved?
Playing with people, hugs, and them saying I'm smart.
Playing with people, hugs, and people telling you you're smart. And so for those of you that are watching, Daniel, of course, is my son. And I just wanted him to share with you just a child's point of view on safety and love. And so right now, thank you, Daniel. Tell everyone bye.
Bye.
Do you have a special message you'd like to share? Not at this time? Okay, thank you. So now we will bring out our Friday guest for Ask the Counselor Friday, Kishana. Hello, Kishana. Hi.
Hi, how are you guys? Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Happy Friday.
Yeah, same to you. I'm in the car today. I hope you guys don't mind.
That's okay. We manage moment by moment, day by day. So, I have been talking to you about passive aggressiveness, talking about effective communication, positive assertiveness, and to start having these conversations. And so, talk about what it is that you would like to discuss with regards to that.
So I want to briefly go over some of the characteristics, because I don't want to assume that, people already know when they hear what the words passive aggressive means and assertive means. So I think it's fair to go over the characteristics so that people will have a clear mindset on what it is that we're talking about and what behaviors that go with those terms.
Yes. I think that would be good to set a foundation because, we hear passive aggressive and it gets thrown around a lot, but do we really know what that means, And so, yeah, thank you, definitely.
Yeah, so I'll go over the characteristics. So when you see passive aggressive behavior, what I like to do, because I analyze behavior, is to first sit back and say, what is the behavior that I'm observing telling me? That person needs something. What are they telling me through their behavior that they need? And so I'll go on with the characteristics. So one of the characteristics of passive aggressive behavior is frequently criticizing or protesting someone or something. And the reason why that's in there is because once we go over the assertive, then you'll see what assertive communication behavior looks like and how they differ. Another form of passive aggressive behavior is being disrespectful, procrastinating or being forgetful, performing tasks inefficiently. It's almost like you're doing it on purpose. Some of the things, because maybe your opinions about that person or the work you're doing, you don't like it. And instead of communicating those things, you're going to show with your behavior. You're still going to do a project, but you're going to show in the behavior how slack and slothful you can be, and how unconcerned you can be about what you're working on. Stubbornness is also a form of passive aggressive behavior. Blaming others and complaining about, just being a chronic complainer. Because once you go into assertive behavior, you'll see that none of these apply to that, and it's definitely the opposite.
So, would you consider like the silent treatment passive aggressive behavior?
It can be ignoring, if it just depends on the intent behind it. Someone may need a pause because in their life they feel like if they communicate right now, it may not go well, so they just need to wait until they find clarity. But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is someone who says, just because I feel this way about this person, I'm going to ignore them or be rude to them.
Because that happens in the workplace a lot, right? I've had a lot of people say, like, they go to work, and when they were going to work, going to the break room, and instead of people saying, like, hey, I am upset with you or I have a problem with you, they would just get ignored. And they would be thinking, like, wow, last week we were good, and then this happened. But I noticed that children do this sometimes too. And you have to be like, hey, did you just hear what I said? And I have to repeat that a few times. And so I'm thinking, is this like passive aggressive? Also, another thing that I noticed, even with one of my children, is that when this particular child gets upset, they might slam something on the table, like, oh, or brush past something really hard, like, did you just shift your body to make that thing, make a noise? Or even like a loud just, and I'm like, is that passive aggressiveness, And how can I help you communicate better at this moment before that just turns into something worse,
Yeah, and so you want to remember that all behavior, most behavior, I'll say most behavior, is learned behavior. And so what you need to look at first, and I stated this earlier, is what is their behavior telling me right now? What do they need? And most of the time, if the child has not learned or does not know how to put those feelings into words, and communicate that, then they will resort into what you said, like slamming things or pushing things aside. And so it's a good practice as a parent to always ask a question when you're unsure about a behavior. And if it's a passive aggressive behavior, there's nothing wrong with asking your child, what is your behavior telling me right now? What are you trying to tell me with your behavior? Because in fact, they are communicating, but it's the way in which they're communicating that can be cause harm, or not have good outcomes. And so you want to always check as a parent, ask your child, what is your behavior telling me right now? I'm curious about, why did you slam that down? Why did you make that sound? What does that behavior tell me? Because I don't understand what that means. Tell me what that means, and try to elicit feeling words and responses other than actions that are passive aggressive.
And what about when you just have a child that may be very strong-willed or stubborn, and that's just like, what do you do with that? I know I try to do is not to personalize at that moment, because then I could become triggered by their behavior, and I'm like, oh no, it's going to be a power struggle at this point, right? And so what do you do at that moment when you just have that struggle?
Yes, as a parent, to avoid those conflicts that could escalate very quickly, or to avoid those power struggles back and forth, because it's a no-win situation, really. Even if the parent always has an upper hand in those situations, it's still kind of, things needs still haven't been met and things weren't talked through. So it's always a good practice to know this age and stage of development for the child. Is this, ask yourself, is this age appropriate behavior? Is even in this passive aggressiveness, is this age appropriate behavior? And I want to share an example because there were some things that my 12-year-old son used to do maybe about a year or two ago, and it pretty much annoyed me. Now I could have put the clamp down and said, you know what, enough, I'm not, no. But instead I had to step back, think about, okay, my child is this age. I work with this age group too. I see what they do and how they respond. So is this age appropriate behavior? Yes, it is. Do I want it to change or shift a little? Yes, I do. But the most amazing thing happened when I told him, I said, you know what, son, that behavior, it used to annoy me, but I realized that you're doing exactly what a 12-year-old would do. And we had a good laugh out of that. So every time he did that behavior that annoyed me, I said, that's what a 12-year-old would do. And it kind of flipped things and shifted things. And I was not on the defense anymore, trying to change his behavior through negative reinforcement. I just let him know, you know, I know as a child, this is what 12-year-old boys do. And it's okay, just as long as it's not out of control. So did we go offline for a moment? I'm not sure where Christina went, but I'll also talk about, I'm not sure what happened to Christina. If you want me to continue to talk about characteristics of assertive behavior, I can do that. And so I just used and shared that example of my son we had a real moment there where I said, you know what, your behavior is exactly what a 12-year-old would do. We laughed about it. And after I did that, it didn't bother me like it did before, because I used my words to tell him exactly how that behavior made me feel. And that, you know what, it's okay because you're 12 and I know this is what 12-year-olds do. So let me move on to assertive behavior and what the characteristics are for that behavior. So an assertive person, you'll know them just from their very presence. It's a person who stands tall, does not hunch over, does not mumble words, speaks very clearly and directly, is someone who is very stable emotionally, and you won't see a lot of bizarre or incongruent type behavior from this person. And of course, no one's perfect, so we're not looking for perfection, but what we are looking for is growth. And so an assertive person will speak clearly and directly to you about what their concerns are, or what the task is, how they'd like you to do it, what their feelings are. And it would be you as a person receiving the behavior, you'll know, you know, this is coming from a good place. This is not coming from an aggressive place. This person communicates directly, and it's coming from a good place. And so.
Hey, Kishana, sorry. Christina's trying to hop back on. It was a technical issue.
Oh, okay.
But keep going. You're awesome.
And so what you want to do as a parent is model assertive behavior. Because just like that example I showed you with my son, I was very clear and direct with him. And I said, look, this behavior, it annoys me and I don't like it. But I know it's what a 12-year-old boy would do. I noticed then his defenses went down and he was able to monitor himself a little bit more because I brought that realization to him. And I told him, I didn't yell at him, scream at him, punish him. I just used my words and assertively and directly told him how I felt. And it wasn't done in a mean way or mean spirited. And we had a dialogue about it and it was over. And so that's one way to model assertive behavior with your children. And be mindful too of your communications with other adults and other people in the world, because they're watching that. And if they see you, you know, at the store and you're upset with somebody and you curse them out and or slam something down when you're mad, or you know, have road rage or whatever these different characteristics are that can describe aggressive behavior or passive aggressive behavior, just know that you are modeling that behavior to your children. And again, most behavior is learned. And so they, in order for them to be doing the behavior, they had a reference point from somewhere. It could have been from friends or at home, but at home, we're the first teachers of our children. So we are most likely going to be that first reference point of behavior modeling that the child sees. Is she back?
Yes.
I'm back. You know, I'm so glad that I get to manage moment by moment, day by day, because I've been having issues all week, I'll tell you. And happy it's Friday. Hello, everyone. I'm back.
Hey,
ladies.
but Kishana, she had it all good. She's good. She's awesome.
Thank you.
So I was just, you know, building on the example that I shared with my son. Did you hear that? And,
I did not, but you guys go ahead and carry on.
and how in that moment, in those moments of my assertive communication and my assertive behavior modeling and expressing to him in a direct but firm and clear way that, look, I don't like this type of behavior, but I also understand you're 12 and it's age appropriate. Okay. So we, it could have gone a different way if I matched his unwanted behavior with aggressive behavior, or if I matched his unwanted behavior with passive aggressive behavior. And so to reduce the likelihood of that, of bad outcomes and things escalating or spiraling out of control, I modeled through my communication skills. I named the behavior. I called out how it made me feel. And I also told him, because I know he's this age, you know, I know this is what kids will do. So I'm not trying to necessarily say that you're a bad person, what's wrong with you, you know, not, but I do want him to know how it affects me. And when he knew that, and I did it clearly and directly in a way he could understand, then he made some adjustments.
You know, and it's very important that we tell our kids, like, you're not in trouble, this is a dialogue, right? Because that's their first go-to point, like, am I in trouble? Like, I had to really talk to my children and say, like, what indicated, I was having a conversation with them, like, let's sit down and talk about this. What is indicating to you that you're in trouble, right? And my daughter was like, well, it just sounds like you're yelling. And I said, I typically talk loud. And so, you know, I don't know why this is shocking to you at this moment. However, what I will do is try to lower my voice, and let's talk at the level that you don't feel intimidated, like you're in trouble. And let's do that instead and see how that works. And so I didn't know until I sat down and talked to them that they felt like they were in trouble. And they didn't know that they weren't in trouble by, my tone of voice. And so I said, well, let's talk about that. And how about we write down some stuff and do a family presentation, and we'll just have a little powwow right now, right? And that way we can get to understand a lot more about each other, and figure it all out. One thing I do notice too is that they're watching our reactions with other people.
Yes, and while you were away, that's what I was discussing.
Oh, yay! Amazing, right? I love it. Managing day to day can just really literally run itself. But, I'm serious. All the amazing guests and people that helped out. Shout out to everyone that comes on. Thank you, Kishana, for dedicating your Fridays. And everybody else that's just behind the scenes working hard, right? So with that being said, I know that there's a lot of times we can have a situation that has transpired outside of the home, but then bring that into the home, and the kids start hearing us venting, and maybe we're on the phone with our friends and, we're just venting about something, right? And not really paying attention to the fact that they're learning from this experience of how they're going to interact with people in the future. So how can we then teach them to be assertive at their level positively, right? Even with their relationships, even watching our interactions, showing them like this was appropriate at this time, this was not appropriate for this type of scenario. What would you recommend for that?
I would recommend cultivating clear and direct communication with the use of feeling words, because most of the time when people can't process or everything, all these emotions are flooding in at one time, it's difficult to communicate what it is that you're feeling and why. And the sooner you can do that, the sooner you can move far away from an impulsive type of behavior that might lead to passive aggressiveness or aggressiveness. And so that would be the key there, is taking a step back from the problem, identify what is the feeling that I'm feeling right now and why. And then once they're ready to communicate that, it could be that it's not something they can put into words, but they can write. Or it's not something they can put into words, but they can draw a picture of what that looks like. And so using multiple modalities of communication with children is beneficial to them. Or if they have dolls or play with action figures, show me with your I don't know, your little army guy here or what?
Transformers?
Yeah, whatever. How are you feeling? Can you show me through that? Because you got to know what your child's strength in communication is. And if it's not speaking, you want to definitely cultivate that, but meet them where they're at. If it's drawing, can you draw how you felt right now? Because I really want to understand. Or can you show me? And that's giving them the practice and the skills they need to communicate effectively so they don't implode and have a meltdown, and they can express out how they're feeling.
What would your suggestion be for older kids dealing with teenagers, or like my son who's 17? What do you do when the child kind of just shuts down and doesn't really want to respond to you? Like, what is the option except for saying, oh, I'm taking away your phone because you're not doing what I'm saying? But at the same time, that's not really as effective, right? But I struggle a lot with the older kids and how to discipline them, because if you can't tell like a 17-year-old go do a picture, because they're not going to go do that, right? But what is for older kids?
And just remember too, this process right here does not involve discipline. That doesn't mean a consequence can't come after. Most of the time when I work with students of all ages, I deal with the feeling part and why they did certain behavior part, and then determine that if it warrants it, then a consequence should be given. But then I'm not the one to give the consequence either. I'm the one to talk to them about the behavior and their feelings about why they did what they did. And it would be interesting with the teenagers to know, because a lot of the times they feel no one understands them.
Yeah.
No
Right.
one gets them. No one. And so what came to my mind is trying to figure out, okay, what was the backstory? Maybe that's another way you can put it, behind your behavior. Every type of behavior has, a reason behind it. So tell me, I'm interested to know what your backstory was, just so it can help me to understand why you did what you did. And can you attach a feeling word? How did you feel? Because obviously I wasn't there the whole time. I just saw what I saw, or I just know what I know, but I know there's more to it. So can you just let me know, shed some light so that I'm not in the dark? I care about you and your feelings. I want to know, what happened.
I think that's great advice. Thank you.
One way that I have grown with my adult children, because I tell you, this is a process. It takes intentionality. And we're not going to get it perfect or right the very first time. We got to continue to grow and develop with our children sometime even, and sometimes initially, like my knee-jerk response to my adult children would be like, oh, you should already have known all this. I spent all these years teaching you guys this stuff, and now you're, just acting foolish. And I would just like kind of blow, like, but then when I realized like that's really not getting through to them, so how can I take on a different kind of relationship, still being their mom? And the way that I did that was by, for one, saying, you know what, I was mad, so I'm sorry. It's not an excuse, but I would like to understand, how would you have done it differently, right? I want to know if there's something you're mad about, the way that I did something, explain to me what your process would have looked like. Tell me what solution that you would have came up with. And if you don't know, it's safe to just say you don't know, but I really want you to think about it. If you were in my shoes as the parent and we switched roles, what would your process have looked like? Understanding that I have a parental obligation, but at the same time, that could be a loving communication between us moment and a healing moment, where they get to switch roles and see that, well, maybe my mom did do some things right, I might not have liked it. My dad did tell me something that was actually accurate. I may not have liked it, but if I can put myself in their position, this is where they're coming from. And then that's when my children will come back and say, Mom, and now that we have this process, they understand, Mom, I know that you're trying to keep us safe. And sometimes you get upset about, things that look like they're going to be, impacting our safety, but I got it. And I'm able to say, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that, because you met them on their level, and you let them communicate how they would feel, or how it would feel if they were you. You showed empathy for them and allowed a moment of them to show empathy for you. I had a similar, situation with, I have a 25-year-old son who, I get concerned because of everything that has happened in the current events with young Black males. I do get concerned, and sometimes it raises my level of frustration. And so I just had to tell him, because he asked me one day, Mom, why are you always on me about being out and things like that? And I said, you know what, son, I want you to know this. You don't have a Black son. I'm not trying to politicize this or anything, but I wanted to make sure that he understood that where I'm coming from, because he doesn't know that worry. He doesn't know that anxiety. He doesn't know how it feels to be a parent of a Black son. And so we met each other there, and all he could do is respect it and say, you're right, I don't. So I respect you telling me this, because now it helps me to know your backstory, Mom, and why you're on me like this. So
And that becomes effective communication because, over time, the kids will understand, oh, well, my mom is really, concerned about me. And I need to just maybe say, like my kids, they'll text me, "Hey, mom, I'm okay." That way it doesn't build up to the point where it's like, And so we developed that process though. It took some time. It took me understanding that now you're 26. What is that going to look like? My daughter's 26. She has 3 children. I have 3 grandchildren. My other daughter will be 23, right? What is my expectation for communication for them, right? Is it just that you're telling me, hey, I went to work today, I'm okay, or just saying, hey, mom, love you, and am I sending that message like, hey, just shouting out, saying hi, wondering what you're doing, because they don't live in my home. And then with the 14-year-old, even my daughter, and I have the one son too, just trying to help them to role play, trying to help to have a discussion. I totally agree with being able to write things down, draw. You get a lot out of art. As a matter of fact, I saw yesterday, and this is totally off, but on a Netflix documentary, and I said I was going to go on a hiatus from doing that, but I came back. There was a little 7-year-old boy who helped to solve a murder through a picture.
Wow.
And it was just, everything was laid out on that picture. But that was the only way that he could communicate.
Yes. And that's the interesting thing. You got to know what a person's communication strength is. Because if they sat there and tried to ask him, he probably couldn't really put all the words to it to the extent that he did in that drawing, which sounds like it was very specific and very precise.
Yes. So Natasha, what they did was when they brought him on the stand, and then we're going to wrap up, he was able to point to every single thing. They were pointing to it. What's this? And he described that whole murder scene.
Wow.
And I was like, there's a lot to be said about that. I don't care if something happens. I put Play-Doh in my son's hand with little tools. And I let him sit there and sculpt and then say, hey, what's this? Even this little piece right here, what is this describing to me, right? I want to be in your world at that moment that you are creating this and understand what it is that you created and why. And that gives us some insight into the way that they feel that they're oftentimes not able to externalize. Natasha, do you have any final questions?
I don't right now, but I appreciate that advice for sure. Thank you.
Okay. And Kishana, would you like to give a final word of admonition or just a thought?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that difficult. Don't stress yourself out and focus on trying too hard when you're trying to cultivate this communication skill. If anything, remember this. Put yourself in your child's shoes. Know their age-appropriate behaviors, and then move forward with your plan of action. And ask your child, demonstrate and model for your child to do the same. And over time, I believe you'll see growth.
Thank you so much again for dedicating your Fridays and coming on managing day to day. So this is where we will close, and I challenge all of you guys to be just very intentional about what we do this week with our children. You have been watching Mad Connection. I hope you're all well. Bye-bye.
Bye.